Okay. Let's see. I think we're rolling here. Okay, Islam. Let me start by asking a question. When I say the word Islam, or when you look at this picture, what comes to your mind?
Worship of the universe.
Worship of the universe?
Like the stars and like things in the universe.
Okay, all right.
I just think of the
Middle East, even though we know that really the largest Islamic country in the world is Indonesia. But even people in Indonesia, often there's a lot of migration from the Middle East even to that part of the world. What else comes to your mind when you think of it? Or people's mind in general. It doesn't have to necessarily be you, but what response does this evoke?
radical terrorism.
Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of people, because of news and stuff, you say the word Islam. My daughter had a friend who was Muslim, very sweet gal who studied out at the University of Iowa. And she brought her to our house one day. And I actually wrestled with thoughts of, I wonder if she has something on her person that might be dangerous. You know what I'm saying? I felt so rotten about that later, but that was part of the inculcation of this idea that's been driven into the West. So anything else come to mind when you think of Islam? Okay, those are probably some of the main things. It is one of the three missionary religions, and also, when it comes to the nature of God, monotheistic. Sikhism is also monotheistic, but Sikhism is a sect of Islam. So, okay, we looked at distribution of other religions. Let's take a look here at Buddhism, and when you look at the green area, you're seeing 50% of the population plus is Muslim. And then, of course, as we mentioned, you come down here, there's a lot of migration from this part of the world down here. When you look at this area right here, what comes to your mind? Yeah, that's part of it. Actually, 1040 window is kind of this way a little more, but it does take in some of this. What else comes to your mind? How did that get green? When did this expanse of Islam take place? Yeah, the Muslim conquest, eventually halted by? The hammer, right. Charles Martel. It's interesting that in Portuguese, martelo. And is that in Spanish too? Martillo is hammer. Yeah, interesting. And that happened where? And Tours is in the country of? France, right, exactly. So, in fact, you see up there. So, and then there are other variations, populations of 10 to 50% in other locations. And notice India as a country has a large population of Islamic people. Normally, not always, normally when you think of Islam, you think of a religion that is strong and dominant in a location, don't you? But in India, that's really not the case. I mean, there are a lot of Muslims, but really the radical Hindus pose a lot of problems and even threaten the well-being of everybody, including Muslims. So, all right. Yeah, sorry, I'll go back here.
I can't tell. Is it really yellow or green in that?
I don't even remember. That's Israel plus. It's yellow. You have in Jerusalem itself, you have the Muslim quarter. And then most Palestinians would associate with Islam as well. Yeah. Okay, and this is by countries with the largest Muslim population. Pew Research Center, again, usually pretty reliable. And again, there's Indonesia. Not a ton ahead of India, but significantly. 87.1% of Indonesia Islam. I mean, no other, let's see, you got Pakistan is 96. Yeah, there are others. Bangladesh, 90. Egypt, Iran is 99.5. I'm looking for Saudi Arabia on here. Okay, doesn't measure in the first with the largest numbers. So now notice that this is a projection over here on the right side. There's a projection that says by 2060, India will actually take over in terms of numbers. Now, in terms of influence, maybe not. The radical Hinduism in India is very strong and advancing, but it's just a projection. The projections that Indonesia will actually fall to number 4, even though it will increase in the number of Muslims. But that's all projections.
What percentage of Afghanistan right now?
I don't know. You could Google that and find out. Yeah, I'm not sure. But wait, okay, that's the projection, yeah. Somebody want to see what, do they have that?
I did the project on Afghanistan in the other class.
Okay.
It was like 99.8%.
Right now?
Right now.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So it must be whoosh, right here. I mean, it's, yeah. Good. Yeah. All right, well, anyway, you don't have to memorize all that, but I do want you to remember that Indonesia has the largest population, not the largest percentage. Largest percentage would, right now, according to this, be Iran. All these very close. But just remember Indonesia, please. All right, and then looking in terms of a comparison of major world religions, okay? Now remember that Christianity, that's always an exaggeration because it includes Roman Catholicism, but categorically that is correct. Roman Catholicism would fall in that category of professing Christendom. And then right next to that is the Muslim faith. All right. Notice the Jewish population by comparison, 0.2% of the world. Isn't that amazing? You would think by looking at that the Jews would be relatively unimpressive and unimpactful in world politics, and yet just the opposite's true. You know, you guys all heard that Netanyahu is back in power, right, in Israel again, and very, very interesting things are going. Yeah, I agree. I think that's really cool. All right, so you can see the comparison, and no projection there. All right, the origins of Islam. Now, in contrast to Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism, Confucianism, history is important to the Islamic world. Maybe it is. It's just in the book that I read, I'll probably mention this book several times, Seeking Out Finding Jesus. One of the battles that this guy faces is verifying the historicity of, yeah. In fact, when he begins to learn what the Muslim historians are saying about Muhammad, it terrifies him, and it completely pulls the rug out from underneath him. One of the things that God uses to bring him to Christ. Pretty fascinating. So I hope whatever you guys are looking at have something to do with the class, okay? All right, so the date, 7th century, which is what? Is that 600s or 800s? Yeah, 600s, yep. that is so confusing sometimes, isn't it? We're in the 21st century, but it's the 20, it's 20. So you guys understand why that is, right? Okay. Location, Mecca. I mean, if there's anything historically and geographically you need to remember is that. Mecca and Medina, there's a Medina, Ohio, okay? Got lots of variations of pronunciations, but there's also a Lima, Ohio instead of Lima, yeah. But these are the two most important. And remember that these are two of the three chief religious sites of Islam. The other one being? Jerusalem. Exactly. There's a Muslim quarter in Jerusalem. Yep. Okay. What about Muhammad? Well, his life, 570 to 632. This is obviously AD. And there's a lot of interesting stuff about this cube. Is there anything that you've heard about it or know about it that you could share with us? What is the significance of this cube? Yeah.
So they suppose it's built by Adam, but then Abraham redid it, and so then all the Islam, or like all the Muslims who just stood there, at least once in life, were able to and circle around it 7 times on their knees.
Wow, that's good. You've done some study on this. Yeah. Built by Adam, reworked by Abraham, a very holy site. You go around it 7 times to fulfill your obligation. Notice the size of it, 34 by 40, 43 feet high. What else does anybody know about it? I don't know if you remember anything about the color of it in your studies? Apparently, according to Muslim historicity, it was originally white, but became black. It has nothing to do with races, okay? Remember that even though now it represents the singular God, Allah, it used to be a place that represented, does anybody happen to know how many gods, religions there were in this region before Islam took over? About 360 different gods represented among the tribes that lived in that region. And so, yeah.
Is that with like a specific religion or anything?
No, a number of it almost reminds you a little bit of India, where there were many cohabitating religions. I'm sure there was a lot of commonality amongst some of them, but no, they were not under one umbrella. And so that, and it becomes black when eventually it absorbs all of the corruption, everything of these gods becomes one. But and what you're looking at here is a photo of. I mean, it's Mecca, but what's going on? What event would this be? Just give me a little, we'll come back to these things, but what is the major event of the year for Muslims? It's not one day, but it is. Somebody may have said it. Ramadan, exactly. And so, as we'll see, one of the goals of faithful Muslims is to make at least once in your lifetime, a pilgrimage, a Hajj, to Mecca. All right, we'll come back to that. Now, according to the Muslim faith, Muhammad received visions, and I notice this vision here is singular, but actually this is the beginning of a sequence of visions that he allegedly received from the angel Gabriel. Is there something that I didn't fill in?
There are details of Muhammad's life.
That's not this part here? Oh dear.
It's on that slide.
It's on this slide.
Yeah, like under 3, there's an A through B.
Oh, that's really weird. How did that happen? This is not the first time this has happened in here. I don't know what's going on. I know it happened in history of missions, didn't it? Yeah, you're right. And I don't have those memorized to give to you. Let me see if it got mixed up in another slide. Just 1 second here. Let me take a peek and see if maybe. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I have it in my notebook. Some strange things happen. Yeah, okay, it's in my notes. Yeah, I've got, okay. Let me just give them to you. I apologize. They're not, I don't know what happened to them on the slide, but let me give them to you here. Okay. In the year 610, okay, that's an important Oh, wait, no, A, I'm sorry. He was, sorry, you guys look at me like, what? Letter A, he was born in Mecca. Okay. In, and his tribe guarded the cube, which contained idols from each tribe, and about 360 of those idols. And letter C, he was, I believe that's orphaned is the word that I want, by age 6. Okay. And his uncle, letter D, raised him, and his cousin's name is very important because of a future division that takes place among the Muslims. Anybody know what his cousin's name was? Really common name in Islam today. All you got to do to remember his cousin is remember the greatest prize fighter in history, Ali. And later we'll see that there was a division among between the Sunnis and the Shiites with regard to the legitimate successor of Muhammad. Who is his successor? Now, we don't have to deal with that in Christianity, right? We do not believe that the apostles are the successors of Jesus, so that Peter is a successor of Jesus, okay?
Why did most of their decorations they have in the half crescent moon?
Okay, what does the crescent moon mean? It is highly debated. There is some evidence, and again, we got to be really careful how much we insist here. There is some evidence that astrology played a role in Islam. In fact, there are those who would argue that Islam is actually, in essence, a combination of other religious ideas and is not a singular, unique idea. And that the crescent moon stars actually represent elements of astrology that came into it, okay? And we can talk about more of that a little later when we get to that section. He married, letter E, a rich widow, 15 years older than he was. Emma?
Well, 2 questions now. Is all the idols still inside the Kaaba cube or no?
I don't know. That's a, you're welcome to Google that if you want. Kaaba, how do you spell that? I don't have that written down here. Yeah, okay, C-A, I'm sorry, K-A apostrophe, A, yeah, Kaaba. B-A-H, okay, Kaaba, thank you.
Other places it's just spelled
Yeah, it's another one of those attempts to translate something into English. Yeah, I was told by someone that at least some Muslims believe that there's actually a meteorite inside of that came down.
That would be cool.
So I think that even there you're going to have some. Does it say anything? Did you find anything about those 300? What happened to those idols?
In all, there's said to be 306 idols.
Okay.
Still there now. So it assumes as if they're still there.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if anybody. Yeah.
It says they were all taken out except for one black stone. I don't know why that is.
Okay. Okay.
So that's, I assume where that theory comes from.
All right, yeah. Here we go again. We're dealing with differences in our research on what exactly happened. And again, in the book I read really just emphasized that again. So many variations. Emma?
So you said there was a rich widow who's 15 years older than him? I thought it was split that she was 6 years old and he was 15 years older than her. Or is that a different?
I don't think so.
My friend who's a missionary over there was telling me that that's, I don't know, and I got research on it, but that's why when she witnesses and she says, look at your daughter, do you think that you could marry your daughter?
Let me take a peek here. For online students, the question is, some are saying that he was 6 and she was 15 years older than he. Is that what you're saying?
Like, I thought he was older.
Oh, I've never heard that one. Let me just see. Let me just go back to what he says here. Hang on just a sec. And if you brought your book and you're onto that, you can.
This is saying around the age of 25, Muhammad married his wealthy employer, the 28 or 40-year-old widow and daughter of the
Yeah. I mean, you might want to double check and see if that's what they actually told you. I've never heard that. Yeah.
I think it was
Which
his
sec-
wife.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, he stayed married just to her until she died and then married.
Yeah, okay. Maybe that's what we're confusing then. Because she was, the widow that he married
So,
was older. Yeah, that would have to be,
okay.
yeah,
Like, I'm pretty sure there was more than one.
yeah.
Like, if-
And I'll tell you, when you read the Islamic accounts of his life, there are contradictions, and that's one of the things that really confused Nabil when he was wrestling with all of this. Just the inconsistencies, because Islam teaches their people very clearly that the Quran has never changed. There's never been one, modification to the classical, the classical script that it was written in, and he began to study and discover that there are all kinds of variations in the accounts of how all that happened. So it's just another one of those things that it's hard to put your finger on. Okay. All right, well, now we're ready for dates. No. Let me go back. We're just having so much fun. Now can I go to Muhammad's vision? All right. Now that we're seeing straight, ha ha ha. All right. Okay. Muhammad's vision took place in 610 when he was about 40. Okay? 610. About 40 years old. And this happened in a cave. Now, according to the story here, he's praying in a cave, all right? And the angel Gabriel comes to him and recites, okay? In other words, this is not a question of him writing what he heard, in using his own personality and words like we understand biblical inspiration. This is very, very different. This is him receiving basically a dictation from the angel Gabriel. So 96:1-5 says, recite in the name of your Lord who created man from a clot of congealed blood. Recite, and your Lord is most generous, who taught by the pen, taught man what he did not know. Now, again, Nabil will tell you, and some of his research, in fact, not just one source, but several sources, record that when this happened, that he not only got scared, but he actually went into depression. And at least on one occasion, according to several of these sources, he was actually fearful that this was demonic activity going on. He was scared to death. Very different from the account that you'll get, from those who have not studied those sources. And yet that was one of the things that really got him thinking. Number 4, 3 years before making the recitations public, in other words, they would admit that he was so moved by this that it took him 3 years. But what you don't hear is that he was so upset by these things that he actually believed that he was struggling with demonic powers. And one source, at least, even says that he attempted suicide, but was prohibited from committing suicide. Yeah.
So who was he praying to initially? What was he before kind of doing this version of?
This is where he comes on the historical scene, as far as I know. His youth, his young life, and all that.
Yeah, because obviously he's praying to somebody and he knows about demonic possession, and obviously he had none of the Quran or whatever because he hadn't got figured it all out yet. So
his tribe, he was one of those, his family was one of those 360 tribes, or however many tribes there were that worshiped 360 gods. But I can't tell you, it's as a result of these visions, he's actually forced to flee, as we'll see, because he is beginning to tout the idea of one God, and the tribes don't like that. So he actually has to end up fleeing.
Was he familiar with biblical sources then? Because if he even knew who the angel Gabriel was, that's a very big one.
Yeah, I don't know, and this is one of the criticisms of the Quran. There seems to be elements of other religions coming in. Did he actually know anything about the angel Gabriel, or is this something that was created as part of the story afterward? I don't know. Yeah, Nabil himself becomes very, very confused because of contradictory stories. But one of the common threads in most of these historical accounts is that what he experienced and how he lived was not positive. It was not in keeping with what the Muslim faith would tell you. Yeah, but those are good questions. I don't know. And again, Islamic tradition says that these recitations continued until his death in 632. So his first vision comes in 610, so they continue for 22 years, and then he dies. Okay, so he dies around 62. Okay. And we talked earlier about the spread of Islam. You know what amazes me is how quickly this happened. I mean, look, we're talking about a period of about 130 years, okay? I mean, that's a relatively small period of time. You compare that to the spread of Christianity. Christianity did spread, but we're talking about a different kind of spread. We're talking about a militant spread here, okay? And a spread that became very politically dominant as well. Now, eventually Christianity does happen in the following centuries, but this is pretty quick. And then, there's Tours up there where it was finally put to a stop. You wonder, what would have happened if Charles Martel and his army had not put the Muslim advance to a stop there? How far would it, because they wanted to take over all of Europe. And as you know, even today, there's a lot more European presence, Islamic presence in Europe than ever before. England is a country that has really, really wrestled with this whole question. Others. So, okay, let's talk a little about the person of Allah. And that is the symbol for Allah. According to Islamic grammarians, his name cannot be made plural. This is a name that can only be translated in the singular. Now, just review here. What are the names in the Old Testament given for the God that we serve? Okay, now, Jehovah means remember, it comes from the Tetragrammaton, right? The YHWH, as we would translate it. How do we define that name? What's that mean? You add the vowels of Adonai to get Jehovah or Yahweh. Remember what it means? Well, it is a little tricky, a little nebulous, but the main idea is the all-existing one, the I am. Probably, if you want to use one definition of Jehovah that will serve broadly, it's I am. Remember when Moses says, "Who am I going to say sent me? I am has sent you," and I am becomes a huge deal even with the Lord Jesus. I am.
Isn't like Yahweh more specifically I am, and then Jehovah like a version of it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they both, Yahweh and Jehovah really mean the same thing because of the Hebrew letter. Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, what's another word in the Old Testament? Pardon? I'm sorry. Okay, Elohim or Elohim, however you've been, which means what? Well, again, that's kind of a generic term that apparently the nations used in general. In fact, in the beginning, Elohim, Genesis 1:1, created the heavens and the earth. The thing that's interesting about Elohim is sometimes just used in its singular form, which is El, and then it takes various forms, El Shaddai, right, and El Elyon, and others. El means strong one, basically. It's the common word for God. But the unique thing about Elohim is what? What makes that interesting, especially as we think about the nature of God? There's something about the word Elohim that's very important. Pardon? Well, he is seen as creator, but the I am at the end of a Hebrew word signifies what? Plurality. Elohim is a plural word. And there's a debate among scholars as to whether Elohim refers to, like, maybe some would say it's a subtle suggestion of the Trinity because of its plurality. Some would say that it's plurality of power or of majesty or something like that. And so it's not intended to be numerical in its impact. But all that, now does Allah contain other titles about Allah in the Quran, or is it just always Allah? Well, the fact is there are many, many descriptions given of him, but they would reserve his proper name as unique, Allah. There's nothing, lots of descriptions, but only one name.
I watched this thing on like the translation of the Bible into their language, and the problem is that Allah is the word for just God. I mean, that is the most proper name for God in general. And so, trying to find how to translate the word God in the Bible to a word that made sense without using the word Allah was really, really difficult to find. So it's like that is just. I mean, Allah just means God, and we just happen to use it to separate our version of God and their version of God.
Yeah, but Allah is not a Hebrew word.
Right.
So maybe I'm not following you. Allah is not found in the Bible.
Yeah. So when they're trying to translate, like what we translate as God in the English Bible, translate it into whatever, I can't remember, Aramaic.
Arabic.
Allah would be the word that they would use to translate whatever the Hebrew word for God is.
Oh,
Allah would be the most proper, like, technical word to use, but they didn't want to use it because it was so associated with the Allah of the Quran.
but yeah, okay. I'm not totally sure I'm following what you're saying there. Allah. Okay, you're saying that when they look at the Hebrew Bible and see like the word Jehovah or Elohim, they would translate Allah?
No, so when Christian scholars were trying to get a Bible in Aramaic,
Oh.
the word that we would use, like
Okay.
when we're translating the Bible into Aramaic, Allah was the best word for God, but the problem is it's so associated that they couldn't use it.
I'm sorry.
They would say, oh, that's our Allah, but it's not.
Okay.
We use the word Allah even in English.
Right.
As it distinguishes God from Allah.
Yeah.
But technically, if we were just to take Allah and translate
Right.
the word into English, it's just God.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. So when Christians are trying to translate the scriptures into the Arabic language, then, yeah, Allah is the best because it is a singular word for God. Yeah, but because of its associations, yeah. And that is a problem not just in Islam, but in most all the other religions we've talked about. What word do you come up with that doesn't have a prior association? Among the Buddhists or among the Hindus, do you just use the word theos, or it'd be Greek, but in the Hebrew, do you just use the word Jehovah? Yeah, that's a challenge. And you're right; they would avoid the word Allah because it's going to send a message to those who are reading it, that we don't want to send. Yeah. So I mean, look, what's the most important verse in the Hebrew Bible to the Jewish people? Yeah, the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, right? The uniqueness of God. But Islam would say that's a deception because, well, what they would say is Christians have actually manipulated that word. In fact, Jewish people would tell you that as well because they reject the Trinity just like Islam does. And they would say that Christians have manipulated that word and read into it something that's not there and created the idea of a triunity. Anyway, it's a interesting topic. And then, very important in the Islamic faith is the declaration, Allahu Akbar. And you've all heard that, you've heard that yelled out, and God is greatest, And Allah has attributes similar to the God of the Bible, but he's not triune. Now, I would be careful about, one thing I would encourage you not to do if you're talking to a Muslim person is to say that actually we're worshiping the same God, but just in different ways. That's really not true. Because to deny the triune nature of God is to say an awful lot. It's not just as simple as saying, well, we're pretty much on the same page. It's just that we accept the Trinity, you don't. There is so much packed in to the doctrine of the triune God that to say that they're basically the same God is just not true. Okay? So it's okay to recognize that distinction. Allah guides history through prophets, and notice that these prophets include, and notice the biblical characters, Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus. The only one of these that is not a Bible character is Muhammad. And so the Muslim faith would say, the problem with the Bible is that it has been corrupted because of translation over the years. They say, we maintain the original exact words that were given to Muhammad by the prophet, by the angel Gabriel. But because the Bible has undergone so many translations, it has become corrupted. So yes, there are elements in the Bible that are true, okay? But one of the corruptions of the Christian Bible is the exaltation of Jesus, the manipulation of Jesus to make him God. In fact, there are studies and books out about how to, make how Jesus became God. In fact, there's a whole great courses series out called How Jesus Became God. And it really is the idea of the manipulation of Christians to make Jesus into something he never was. But they would recognize the historicity of Jesus, but within the original intention of God when the Bible was given. All right, is there just one more here? Two more. Shirk is association of anything with Allah. Anything that you place side by side with Allah, you're shirking. Now, we use the word shirk as the idea of neglecting a responsibility, right? But the original meaning of it in Arabic is something that's associated with Allah. Then the Quran, we'll stop with this, gives 99 titles, but they would never call those names, okay? We would say that things like El Shaddai, El Elyon, okay, are actual names of God, but they would say, no, there's only one name, Allah. All right, sorry for the little confusion there in the notes, but we'll continue this next time.